story. Is there anybody who needs more? Perhaps you can tell anything, Please, Mariana, it's you.
Thank you. Basically, what I would like to ask you is, I want you to watch the video, and we're going to reflect on it. Okay? I don't want to talk. I want for us to reflect, and then after the video, I'm going to describe the methodology, and then I will ask you to give me feedback and guide me how we can make this happen. Okay, then that is more or less. This video was taken in the Amazon rainforest. At that time, Evelyn was there, and she had the idea to do the video.
I had the video camera on.
And then these two students came from Washington and Jefferson College. Okay, and instead of me telling you, they will tell us what happened. Okay? What are the impressions?
Well, my first one, it sounds a bit negative, but they presented, but there was nobody from the village there.
Okay.
So
It's okay.
they were saying that it's collaborative, that we do everything together.
This is the village elder.
Okay. Any other comments?
But the sentiment I really
What do you mean by that?
the idea of working together and not just observing.
Okay.
The atmosphere, I really like it.
I like that they were trying to get things come out from the people rather than coming in with their questions and their agenda and their interview questions. And that's very important.
In thinking about this whole 5 days together, I've been trying to see what I can pull from it. And, each one of us have our specialties, special interests, whether it's documentation or working in the community. In thinking about the bigger issue and how to make a global change, while we're each contributing in our own way, we're working in a paradigm that's already set up. And in fact, we are the elders. And so I was trying to think who of all the speakers made the most impact on me. And it was the young woman of the We Foundation. It was the young American who came to learn and to cooperate and to offer what she could. And it dawned on me that if in fact, we want to make an impact on change, perhaps it needs to come from young people. So I was going to say, at the end of today, wouldn't it be wonderful if the Human Dignity Program organization could work with students that you've been working with, because they are the ones who can maybe get into positions that can actually change the paradigm. It's a little late for us, even though we're doing good work. It has to come from the leadership of the students who will get to the positions that say, let's think differently and let's make a difference. And I see it again in these two young Americans who, they're being shaped by the experience that you've offered them and that the villagers have offered them. And who knows where they can take it. And already they've said, well, I'm going back to the university to draw others to come here. And this movement of young people, starting to go in loco in the Amazon or wherever other stations you have around the world, but maybe also start these conferences for young people, so that they share their experiences. So I was completely moved and felt very hopeful to see these two young people doing what they're doing. going home and using their knowledge for their own pursuits, but also to share with other people. So I was thrilled to see this. Thank you so much.
May I just very quickly apologize? Our dear Ajahn Chayan, how much time do you have with us now? Because we have some plans with you and we need you here, and Shanida said you have no time today. Will you be
What
with
time
us?
are you leaving? At the end of the meeting?
At 6 we will be finished.
Oh, and then I can reach out.
But we need to be sure because we want to have a little ceremony with you.
That would be better, so I won't interrupt.
But we could also do it now if you...
Yes.
Good.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock? Okay. Thank you.
Then, as you observed in the video, the students were describing their scientific, sociology, environmental science. They were very scientific, you know. And then when I asked, what about dignity? Their faces changed. And you can observe that they went to another paradigm. When they began the studies, they were trained to do research on people. And that is the way we are trained, all of us, is the positivism. Then when we do that, without knowing, we are taking the dignity away from our subjects, because they are not human anymore. They are data. Then, the beauty of this video is to see that shift that we didn't even expect it. When I was videotaping, I had tears because I didn't know after a month that they changed. You know, it was so beautiful. And this was in 2012, in July 2012. And this is what happened with American students, changing their paradigm, their way of thinking. In 2009, I was in the Amazon, and this community of indigenous people had a situation with a mining company, and I applied the same methodology that we did with them, with the students. And what happened with this, in this case, this happened in July 2009, they had the mining company. By September 2009, the indigenous community got rid of the mining company without violence. And I'm talking about a mining company with mercenary people, with no guns, with guns. Okay, there was no violence. For the following year, 4 mining companies, they get rid of them in the same way, with violence. And then they built a road for the students to come. That is the reason we could bring these students. And in 2009, this community didn't have titles for their properties, because indigenous, they don't perceive ownership in that way. They belong to the land, right? But as part of this reflection process, they understood that they had to have titles in order to have this business, ecotourism business. By 2011, all of them got their titles. 45 families, 472 people. And in 2012, we brought the students. Now in 2013, we wrote work in a proposal to bring students from Norway. And the goal is to bring students from all over the world, Japan, everywhere, to help these indigenous in the sense when they come, they pay lodge for staying there. And with that money, the community is living and they don't need to cut trees in order to eat. and the students are learning from the Amazon, learning from the community. The indigenous are teaching the students. Then we can do something without imposing anything on anyone. Now I would like to bring back this to our discussion that we had just a few minutes ago with the Paras video. What happened is that all of us were raised in a different country, in a different culture, and we have different beliefs. Doesn't mean they are good or bad, they are just different beliefs. And that is what is happening in this video. This Muslim community believes in that whatever it is that they believe, and we believe in whatever we believe, and we have those perceptions. And now I'm saying this because I need your help, and I need you to pay attention to this. What I observe is that all of us are trying to do something. But when we are trying to do something, we are not looking to ourselves. Like the police is trying to do something. They are killing, they are doing that, we need to do something. And the others are saying, no, it's our honor. We have to do something, you know. But nobody is looking at ourselves, each one. Then, that is one part. The second part goes with Jan's presentation. When you were describing this information, that is, you know, diffusion of information, that is transactional knowledge, learning, because it's a transaction of information. And that is the way everything is. That is the way we are conditioned to do things. And now we need to look at this from what happened with these kids was transformational learning. I never told them anything. But the methodology was for them to keep a journal, and they had to keep their phone was going off every hour, and when it went off, they will check how they were feeling, how they were thinking, and as they were checking in, they were observing themselves. And what she said, that is the reason I was crying, because I never told them that she was racist or patronizing. I never said that because I knew that in her heart she wanted to do something for these kids, you know. Then I never told her, but I asked to keep the journal and do the exercises, and how she said that they observed their biases, how they felt at the beginning then and how they feel now. And when they were able to observe themselves, they were able to change. Then when you talk about these young people, it's not just the young people, but people that are able to see how we are contributing to the problems that we have. Then I'm telling you this because I need you to help reflect with me and help me to see how we can promote or expand this in the sense this is a methodology that can be used with like biology, earth science, environmental science, sociology. It's not contradictory or said, oh, you cannot do this, but then how we can spread this. In that way, more students are able to have exposure to this type of experience And in my case, I am at Chiang Mai University. I'm doing my doctorate there. And I am doing my work, but as a student, I'm a president of a blog. And as a student, I'm reaching out to students, and we are doing, the kids change their paradigm, and we are doing things. But the academia, the professors, they are not. They don't want to learn. They see what I'm trying to do, and they feel threatened. I don't know. They don't see. They're just protecting their niche. Then I need you to let me know what you see of how we can do something that I'm not seeing. I don't know. That is what I said. Can we reflect? And thank you.
This reminds me of the book When the River Meets the Sky, written by Tim Kennedy. He's a professor at Chiang Mai University in Florida. He did research with the Eskimo in Alaska for so many years, how many years, and he wrote a book reflecting. I am, as a sociologist, I would call this method reflexivity. That's what we do, reflecting our position, our feelings, noting, keep diary, see how we feel about about collecting data, observing people. But Tim has transformed himself. Tim has become my friend, Facebook friend, and keep contact and so on. Tim has transformed himself totally from what he called a sympathizer, just like these kids, going with the idea that you have knowledge to teach the people and so on. The first time that he realized that the people do know what he wanted to teach them, just to boil water before you drink. So they told him, don't forget to boil the water. So when he lived there long enough to observe how they do and how they do things, so he turned to be what he called social mobilizer. So what he did was like a filming their activities. So he made several films to preserve their cultural heritage. What they do, they kill the whale, how do they dance, and how do they teach their children, and so on. So he made, and as a result of his film, he could do what we call advocacy by convincing the policymakers to change the law, to say something that would be beneficial to this indigenous community. So he has moved from just a sympathizer, social mobilizer, and to media advocate. So that's what he changed, and he wrote that in the book. And this really reminds me of the book. I can talk forever, but this is it. This is it.
Any obstacles that you think that I might be confronting in that way, I can be more aware of it as I continue doing this.
Well, maybe you can get allies. This kind of work, 40 years ago, when I did my undergraduate work, it was at that time considered very radical, right? And not very many people were interested. It was called community studies. Basically, it was sociology. And we were just told, we weren't told any methodology, nothing, just that if you go and study whatever area you're interested in, you must not study these people, come back, write a paper, publish it, and then go on with your life. You must live with them. Right? And that was all I was told. And it was very much this type of transformation that I did, I went with other students. I participated in, I went to a very small rural black community in Northern California. And I spent a summer and another semester just living with them, never teaching. I did teach in the schools, but I wasn't there for any particular purpose. They just opened their homes to us. And that was probably the best education I've ever had. And just to be told, you cannot study these people, you have to live with them. And I think in many ways, there are people out there, like this is 40 years ago, there are people out there with this sense and sensibility. And this major is very popular, it's still going on. And I think, connecting with these that are already institutionalized, this is institutionalized now. Now, it may have taken different paths, and maybe the individual path I took was maybe different than others, that maybe they were studying something else and maybe didn't actually live in a small community like I did. But I think it's quite possible that we can look at people who are not threatened, people who are already on the side of this type of sharing and learning. And I think it's out there, it's been there for, well before I ever started. So, let's think of maybe, getting allies, people who have done this already, like she's mentioned, and maybe increase.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
When I see this and this transformational knowledge, the phrase that comes to my mind, it's an old phrase. People used to say, he's gone native, or she's gone native. And I think what that means, it's not a negative thing. It's that culture has become part of the people that went there and interacted and took part in that environment, and the valuable things have come to them, and they've changed. They're a different person. And I think that's really heartwarming to see that the indigenous knowledge there is not just indigenous knowledge, but it's now part of their knowledge and their worldview as well. And when they talk about taking that knowledge back with them, they are recognizing that something is missing where they've come from, and that they want to help their culture expand, and their culture is now a different culture. They're no longer coming from the Western reductionist scientific paradigm. They're coming from a more holistic, integral paradigm, perhaps even a globalized paradigm, but not a neoliberal globalism. I think that's a good thing. And I wonder how effective it is when they go back and try to share that paradigm with people and how they do it. So they've had their learning in context, and they've really immersed themselves. Like learning a language, when you go and you live in the country where the language is spoken by natives, it's much more easy, much more powerful effect on you. But if you go away and you try and talk it from a distance with people who aren't so good at it, you don't learn nothing, but it's harder to do that. So I would wonder whether they're able to bring that culture with them, and want to support them to do that.
Well, it might just be that the people you want to convince, they might not be convinced, and you might just have to live with that the proof is in the pudding, and that this generation of young people who do expose themselves to experiential events and are transformed, that generation will do the changing for you. You just do what you need to do. It's, I'm a teacher of Suzuki violin, and all the professors of the violin who for years used to hit children's fingers and say, that's not right, you're a bad student, go home and practice, where we surround people with love and empathy and, deep problem solving and how to reach each individual children. For those concert masters at orchestras around the world who are still, by the book, rhetoric, violin learning through etudes rather than by ear and by feeling the instrument, I don't think they might not be transformed in the way you're hoping your colleagues might.
You notice I'm Latina? Yes.
Yeah.
I live in the United States, and I studied Colombia, and most of them are Caucasian. And I felt the discrimination. And at that time, I was upset and all of those things. But as I went through these processes, I was able to discover that they didn't see that they were discriminating. Like when you're saying they are not willing, they don't know. It's something like what happened with these families. They don't know. It's like we don't see. And that brings the discussion about the mental models, that each person has a mental model. And with the methodology that I'm describing, that you saw the results.
Yeah, I just feel it happening.
With the methodology that you saw the results. When first we do the hour by hour reflection, you are doing first person action. Is you observing you, because it's not his problem or her problem. Begins here. Then you begin to observe yourself. Then when the students meet once a week, after doing this for a week, we meet and we talk about what we found, because we begin to see things we didn't see. And when we do that, we go into second person action in group. And then by the observe is like 3 weeks doing that. It's like we get out. Okay? And when you get out, you don't get upset. Like now if I'm getting, like you saw recently I was about to cry when I was describing the situation. But then I observed myself and I didn't cry. It went away because I was able to see it. Then my hope is that if we give this tool to everyone, that they will be able to see themselves. And it's like we don't see it. And I cannot judge the people who killed her. I don't judge, we cannot judge. But we have to do something, And basically it's because all of us were conditioned. All of us are conditioned.
Yes, that's what we were discussing during lunchtime with Victoria and Daryl. We were talking about, I was saying about the worldview. It's dictated by our worldview. We cage ourselves with our beliefs or non-belief, which is very dictated by our religious or non-religious belief. So we see what we want to see. So what the family sees right may be wrong for others, and there must be some universal criteria to say, listen, killing others, it's wrong in any judgment. So this is some universal criteria. This is wrong. So you will never see what you do is wrong or right until you step out from where you grow up, where you are educated. You see only one side of the thing. If you step outside and you look back, maybe you see that there are many angles towards one event. So that's how we should educate people to be able to see from different angles and to accept people who think differently than you. That's how we're gonna break the glass. And I was telling about our Buddhist perspective. You see, you love someone else. How would you kill them? You in fact, you are very selfish. You love yourself. You don't want to be hurt, yourself to be hurt. So how would you think that other people as your possession that you can cut off or amputate just to preserve your body? How would you think that the other person belong to you? We don't belong to anyone. Even ourselves, our body, we're gonna be subject to be sick and die eventually. So we cannot dictate that other people gonna be ours, and then if they don't conform to our expectations, then we can just discard them like that. So we have to, well, think about what is the right or wrong in any religion, any standard. There must be one thing about killing or get rid of other beings, and then we can say, okay, this is a worldview that is not very healthy. Gotta do something. And I was saying about Tim Kennedy's approach. He taught the Eskimo how to film. I was saying that he made a lot of films, but it's not made by himself, made by the Eskimo. The people see their own problem in the community. That's very, very enlightened way to look at the problem. Not from the outsider, but the insider see the problem in their community. And they think that this is the way that they get together, how to solve the problem. And they use the camera as a tool to record their decision-making process, the way they do it. So they solve the problem together. This is a participatory communication in an advocacy way. And their films are archived, watched, and as a result, they have Alaska, University of Alaska. Before, the kids had to be taken away from the parents to be educated somewhere from their parents. So they saw the problem, so they flew it. So I would like to see that something going beyond just self-reflection, then it has to be self-reflection within the community. See the problems, what we're going to help to make our community sustainable, and what we're going to do by the indigenous themselves.
They already did.
Yeah.
They got rid of the mining companies.
Yeah.
They built the road. They did it, and I was not there when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not.
That's
this,
great.
It's not this advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
No, they did it, and they were able to do what they needed to do because they reflect. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and then in this evolution for me, I end up doing reflections with American students. That was the first time I did intervention with American students.
Intervention, is that what you call it?
Intervention. Because you intervene, you are doing something.
Is there another word?
I don't know. But suppose that it was, it's another way or not. The point here is that if you want somebody to understand, you have to use their language.
Reflection.
No, then in this intervention, the person intervenes herself, like seeing what this person is doing, because they don't see what they're doing, and they don't mean it. Nobody does. And even the mother of the girl that was killed, what made us believe that she didn't kill? Who knows that if she stepped up, she was going to be killed too? And there were other brothers and sisters, and she couldn't do that. We don't know. But the point here is that my thinking is that I was just talking with my the center next door. And I was saying, if we can do this type of reflections with the students, and these teenagers are studying here, and as they reflect, they can see, and then when they raise their children, they will raise them differently because they are able to see. But before that, they are not, because they didn't know better. We didn't know better. You see what I say? Yes.
Yeah. When you talk about self-reflection, changing cultural identity, it reminds me of the Trilateral Commission in 1972 when they commissioned the publication of a book. It was called Crisis of Democracy. Are you familiar with that? They used three very well-known academics, one from Western Europe, I think it was a French or Belgian academic, I can't remember his name, Samuel Huntington from the United States, and Joji Watanabe from Japan. The Crisis of Democracy for the Trilateral Commission, and from these academics' perspective. Okay. Was that too many people were getting too much information. They were starting to question the status quo. They were starting to overcome cultural hegemony, that is the saturation of elite perspective into all facets of society, in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, in the media, in the church, in the school system. And so in the United States, for example, the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the women's movement, the beginning of the environmental movement, similarly in Western Europe, similarly in Japan. So people were starting to reflect on who they were, their self-identities were changing, social assumptions were changing, how they relate to others, cultural values were changed. So it was a threat. It was a threat to elite-controlled democracy. So that was the problem, and it gets back to what we're talking about in many of these workshops of how we can promote participatory dialogue and building from the grassroots level. It's a threat, excuse me, to elite-controlled societies, particularly in advanced capitalist societies such as Japan or the United States or Great Britain or Belgium. And so when you talk about academics, let's say below the university level, high school teachers are constrained by the boards of education of what they can teach. Can they actually talk about different social issues, women's empowerment, or can they talk about environmental sustainability? Often they don't have the time, even if they want to. If they try to, they may not get a full-time position. So the students often don't have the opportunity to develop and utilize their critical thinking skills, to question the society's values, and these are elite values. Now in your case, you're taking students out into the field. Wonderful opportunity for them to be able to be exposed to different perspectives, as they said. It broadens their perspective, broadens their worldview, changes them. And what would be important, as it was pointed out, when they go back, they continue their learning process. Because when I was at university, I learned the most when I was involved in the different student movements. That's where I learned the most. And that's what generated me, or motivated me to study more. There are academics who are able to teach, employ a critical perspective, a dissident analysis, if you will. But I agree with what you were saying. They are probably far and few between. Those people do not get tenure. Right? So I think it's incumbent on us. We're the privileged people. Those students are privileged. They've come from privileged class backgrounds. They're American citizens. They can go out there. They can learn, and it's their responsibility. It's our responsibility to share what we've learned with others. It could be just our friends, our relatives. It could be our students. It could be our colleagues, and to try to influence our government policies, the way our government's policies are negatively affecting the world, or our corporate policies. So what you're doing is, I think, certainly very important and beneficial, not only to, and I wanted to ask a question about the ecotourism system, or what you were talking about, because ecotourism could be a problem, but I think you mentioned before that you're going to be limiting the areas where the tourists can go to, and so the indigenous peoples, or those communities there, they're going to have their private areas respected, and so the tourists won't be able to intrude into those areas. Is that right? Okay, so that's I think that is also very good.
That is the part that he was doing this density study to make sure they were monitoring that is not a reduction in the density of the plants and all of these measured, scientifically done stuff. Yeah. Jen, you had a question, please.
Not so much a question, an observation. I've listened to what has been said so far, and I don't have an issue with much of this, but I'd like to take it a bit further, because I also sense a bit of going native in the way it's being presented here. And I think there is a good element in exposing people to other cultures and making them really going it the rough way and etc. But there needs to be some kind of reciprocity, some kind of an exchange which makes it work for both parties concerned. And I'm going to make a shift now. One of my PhD students did her PhD on the transition movement. I don't know how familiar you are with that new movement which originally started in Ireland and has now spread in many parts of the Western world. Attempts to really start from a village perspective, a town perspective, and build a new kind of living together in a sustainable way, ecologically and economically, and in other ways sustainable as a community. She, of course, after doing all these initial general types of assessment, she lived or she participated for a year in the transition movement in Amherst, where we were working and living in those days. And there were a lot of interesting things to be said about that particular event, but two things which come to mind which are quite important, or I think quite important. On the one hand, that group of people engaged in this particular kind of transition movement was considering itself a bit as an elite, as the people who knew, who were sharing their values among themselves. In a social demographic way, they were well established, well-to-do people. They were well educated. But what was lacking there were the students, the youngsters, and also the minorities. They didn't participate in this particular event. And then after a year of participating in this, they ran out of steam. They didn't really have much to share anymore. And the most frustrating thing she observed was because they insisted on being equals to each other. They insisted that expertise was not taking into account the skills which some people could contribute, given their background, given their profession, were in a way ignored, because we all were equals, we all were trying to organize ourselves or themselves in a participatory, democratic way. And so the conclusion of her PhD was we need leaders, and of course leaders in a to be defined way. It's not leaders in a traditional way, in order to grow as a society and contribute to sustainable change. Because without steering it in certain ways, without directions, you may end up conscientizing and enlightening yourself. And as students, to take it back to your case, they may have great experience, great events happening to them, but when they are going into another context, they may be lost again, because there is no way to maintain, to sustain this. So I think that often we continue looking at this as individual issues rather than social issues and contextual issues.
Thank you so much for all your input.